Less than a week ago, President Donald Trump ordered U.S. B 2 bombers to fly over Iran and drop some of the biggest bombs known to mankind from this planet. And since then, maybe that's not even the biggest controversy. Since then, the effects of those bombs is what everyone is talking about and trying to get a handle on what actually happened from those bombs. To help us get through this, we have extraordinaire former MIT professor Ted Postol, professor of science, technology, and national security. Ted, how are you, sir?
Uh, Rather good, even though I was working like crazy after this briefing, putting together some things for our discussion now.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, I want everyone to know how hard Ted works for us, for you, and for us to help understand to get to the bottom of that because there is so much misinformation. I don't want to call it deception necessarily at this point in time, but could potentially
Well,
be
I think
deception.
it's deception. I think there's no question that they are inventing what they're saying, and they did not do their homework. As we'll see when we discuss the briefing.
Yeah, so this morning at 8 a.m., as a matter of fact, Defense Secretary Hegseth and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kaine, brought to the American public a presentation. We'd like to go through it very, very methodically, actually. And Ted saw it live, and we've reviewed some of the film already. Not film, the video of the briefing. And we'd like to take you through it too, because Ted has some wonderful observations as to what he saw from what transpired. I'd like to start off with how they portrayed the whole operation, which actually began 15 years ago. So this was not an overnight thing where they sat down with the president and told him a few things, and he made an impulse decision on something. Again, this has been going on for years, and I'll let them explain it. So here's Chairman Joint Chiefs of Staff Dan Kaine.
In 2009, a Defense Threat Reduction Agency officer was brought into a vault at an undisclosed location and briefed on something going on in Iran. He was shown some photos and some highly classified intelligence of what looked like a major construction project in the mountains of Iran. He was tasked to study this facility, work with the intelligence community to understand it, and he was soon joined by an additional teammate. For more than 15 years, this officer and his teammate lived and breathed this single target, Fordo, a critical element of Iran's covert nuclear weapons program. He studied the geology. He watched the Iranians dig it out. He watched the construction, the weather, the discard material, the geology, the construction materials, where the materials came from. He looked at the vent shaft, the exhaust shaft, the electrical systems, the environmental control systems, every nook, every crater, every piece of equipment going in and every piece of equipment going out. And they knew from the very first days what this was for. You do not build a multi-layered underground bunker complex with centrifuges and other equipment in a mountain for any peaceful purpose. And along the way, they realized we did not have a weapon that could adequately strike and kill this target. So they began a journey to work with industry and other tacticians to develop the GBU-57. They tested it over and over again, tried different options, tried more after that. They accomplished hundreds of test shots and dropped many full-scale weapons against extremely realistic targets.
Ted, it certainly sounds like they did their due diligence for 15 years. How do you assess how they presented the foundation of this whole operation?
Well, I think it's exactly what I would have expected. I mean, a project like this, GBU 57, is a big, complicated project. I had very extensive, extremely extensive contacts within the Defense Threat Reduction Agency when I was an advisor to the Chief of Naval Operations. My experiences there were that there were some people who were very knowledgeable and capable, and there were also snafus at the agency where they screwed up on some very, very big issues. And it came to the attention of the Chief of Naval Operations through my activities, but that's another discussion. But there's no doubt that there are competent people within the agency, and again, underscoring that they can screw up in spite of these competent people. The leadership has its own problems, but I have no doubt that this was a well planned and executed project. And I also have no doubt from what was said later in this briefing that nobody who was giving this briefing to the public actually consulted with the engineers and scientists who actually worked on this munition. As we'll see as we go forward, we'll see that they, in their attempts to embellish their deceptive claims, they actually reveal information that a technically well-informed person who had participated in this project, somebody who knew what they were doing, incidentally, not necessarily the program manager, might be or might not be, but the people who are at the working level who knew what they were doing would have immediately recognized as an indication that the munition did not work as they were hoping. But
Wow.
we'll talk about that.
Sure. Well, here's Defense Secretary Hegsth describing basically that it was a flawless operation.
There's public imagery available saying that highly enriched uranium was moved out of Fordo before the strikes. Is that accurate? Have you seen that?
There's nothing that I've seen that suggests that we didn't hit exactly what we wanted to hit in those locations.
Ted?
Well, I mean, if they hit the location, so what? I mean, the question is, did they do any real damage?
Right.
And he doesn't really say anything at this point. And later on, he's going to say things that indicate he should have known, if he was seriously interested, that the evidence was that they didn't do damage on those shafts.
He elaborated a little bit more later on in the hearing, and this is what
Fine.
he also had to say regarding the moving of the uranium beforehand.
We're certain that the uranium was removed from the facility before the B-2 struck.
So I'm not aware of any intelligence that I've reviewed that says things were not where they were supposed to be, moved or otherwise.
Ted,
Well,
this is one of the biggest. I'm sorry. This is just quickly. I just want to say this is one of the biggest controversies as to what's going on and what actually transpired. Was that uranium there when those bombs hit?
Well, I would say that the only way the uranium could be there is if the Iranians are so incompetent that it's hard to believe that anybody could be that incompetent. I mean, it's when you look at the way the Iranians have worked on this project, their competence is spectacular. So, their scientific capabilities are out of, top of the line. We know from later in this briefing that they put caps on top of the vents because they were expecting an attack. So we know from the intelligence that an attack was expected by the Iranians. Otherwise, why would they put these concrete caps on the vents? So we know from our observations that they were expecting an attack. Those caps were almost certainly ultra high performance concrete caps, which are tremendously strong to impact.
Yeah, Ted, you had said earlier when we were talking. Can you tell us a little bit about that cement? It's just not your everyday sidewalk cement.
Oh no! This is a kind of cement that has been under development for many years. The Iranians are among the top technically advanced countries in the development of this cement, although there are other countries that are working on it all the time. And what you do is when you mix this cement, you mix in fibers of either steel or sometimes it could be an organic, material. It's something very, very strong, filaments, and they're thin, and they permeate the entire. When you mix the concrete, they permeate the entire concrete. Later on, I can show a photograph of a broken piece of concrete, and you can see all these little hairs coming out of it. And those filaments keep the concrete from cracking at critical points. So the way the concrete typically fails, normal concrete, is it gets stressed at a location and it's brittle, and it then fractures. But these fibers that are in the concrete prevent it, uh, allow it to flex without these the stresses locally getting large enough. It distributes the stresses over a large enough volume that the concrete does not fail. And this is tremendously higher strength than anything that's normal concrete, and it's being used all over the place.
And you're saying like even stronger than, let's say, rebar that's being used. That it's
Oh no,
regularly used.
it's much stronger than rebar. Much stronger than rebar. In fact, in the video we'll see evidence of rebar in the experimental demonstration that the Pentagon shows in this briefing. And the rebar, either the test was a fraudulent test and they used regular concrete, or the test was a failure of reinforced ultra high performance concrete, because it will shatter if you hit it hard enough. And in the case of this particular test, the thickness of the concrete was quite low. It was a few meters, and they're talking about 60, 70 meters down.
Right.
So you really have to penetrate a lot. So the test was in no way indicating what this weapon is really, what they claim it is capable of doing. Let's put it that way. But I'll describe that later.
Sure. So Hegsth goes on to describe, there are pictures that are already out available to all of us that you can see where there are the strike points and you see 3 holes. Well, Hegsth goes on to explain why that's a little bit, not deceiving, but to an untrained eye, you don't know what you're looking at. So he explains to us what's going on with these 3 holes.
With his untrained eye, he explains to us. Yes, go
ahead. Fair enough. So here we go.
Even in just the public reporting, if you see the post-strike shaft of the 3 holes, the vast majority, and fairly so, the vast majority of speculation has been those are the 3 strike points. When in actuality, what you realize is these are the vents, these are the caps. The first munition took the cap off, and the other 5 went down the center hole, which if you're planning the target, you would want it to be the direct one going to the bottom. These are the types of things that go into the planning for a strike that the Pentagon would not expect the press corps, the American people, to initially understand.
Ted, do you buy that description?
I think it's not quite accurate, but it's no surprise given that he probably made no real preparation for this talk. What I would, I don't have the high resolution image, but what it looks to me is that the GBU 57 punched through the concrete, which is absolutely no surprise if it's a concrete, even ultra high performance concrete. Dropping the bomb from high altitudes, it's going to come in at a high speed, Mach 2 or something close to that. And it's going to hit, it's 30,000 pounds of weapon hitting over a small volume. And so it's going to punch right through. Now, if some of the observations that he talks about later are correct, we don't know that. We only know what he has claimed the observations of pilots were. There was probably a tremendous amount of explosive gases from the explosion inside the vent and the penetrating hole that the munition was passing through. And that came up through the tunnel, and it blew debris from inside the tunnel up through the hole that was made by the penetration event earlier. And that's where the debris you see, next to the punched hole is from. It's not from, the initial impact.
Impact. Got it. So let's get into the some of the. They almost bring us blow by blow to how it all unfolded.
Oh yeah,
and,
yeah. Very
right.
revealing in terms of the embellishments.
All right. So Ted, as I play this, you stop me at any time, and we'll stop it
Okay,
as we're
sure.
watching this together. All right.
In June of 2008, you can see these three holes. Depicted here is the main exhaust shaft with two additional ventilation shafts on either side. The United States decided to strike these two ventilation shafts, as seen here on the main graphic, as the primary point of entry into the mission space. In the days preceding the attack against Fordo, the Iranians attempted to cover the shafts with concrete to try to prevent an attack. I won't share the specific dimensions of the concrete cap, but you should know that we know what the dimensions of those concrete caps
Would
were.
you stop there,
The plan-
please?
Absolutely.
This is an example of deception or just profound ignorance by the chair of the Joint Chiefs. If you put a cap on top of these vents, which is obvious they did, we can see that they did, and in fact, that indicates to us that they were forewarned of the attack, which also indicates that they would have almost certainly removed the uranium, the enriched uranium that we were going to target, because that's an easy thing to do, as we'll discuss later. But why wouldn't you put a cap on the bottom as well? What you would do is, if you knew what you were doing, and we know the Iranians know exactly what they're doing, is you would seal the vent from the bottom and the top. So if the munition actually penetrated the top, which incidentally you would expect that to happen, there's no way you can seal that top against this kind of munition with just concrete cap. You can slow it up dramatically, which is probably a good reason because if you slow it up, its penetrating power to deeper, greater depths is diminished. And also, if the concrete cap is what's called inhomogeneous, you can cause the munition to to be deflected as it goes through that cap. And I'll bet you a nickel anytime that if we could get at the data for that concrete cap, it's designed to be inhomogeneous, so as to cause deflections of the munition as it goes through. That's my bet, because the Iranians certainly understand that better than I do. Then at the bottom of the shaft, you would build a very fortified concrete wall to make sure that any of the gases that are produced by the explosion of the warhead, it carries about 6,000 pounds of high explosives. That's going to create a tremendous volume of superheated explosive gases. And you want those gases to be vented away from the opening of the vent at the bottom, where you have material that centrifuges and things you want to protect from the blast wave. So what would happen is the whole vent would become pressurized with the explosive gases, and the explosive gases would propagate up through the vent and out into the air. And as we'll see, he talks about a pilot seeing a tremendously bright fireball. Well,
yeah, we'll get to that.
It's venting from the vent rather than underground, where it's been diverted back out into the surrounding environment.
And Ted, the vents you're talking about are what we see on screen here. What I'm saying, that it kind of looks like a fork.
The top center three diagrams. The middle diagram is a map, and to the right and the left of those three images are vent structures, where postulated vent structures where there are caps on each of the three vents. It's interesting that there are two kinds of caps. Maybe they don't even know what the structure of the caps were, so they're just hedging. Those caps are probably ultra high performance concrete that is not only inhomogeneous but layered so that it will deflect the ammunition hitting the cap. So at the bottom, which they show as basically open, you would have another cap. You would put that in. You'd probably have a right angle at the bottom because the vent is going to take a right angle to go into a cavity. And at the outward boundary of that right angle tunnel, you would have a gigantic cap of ultra high performance concrete to contain the blast that would be in the vent. And the vent is probably lined with ultra high performance concrete, so it won't shatter. So the walls will not necessarily shatter from the blast. They won't be large enough. So the vent will still be usable after everything is over. So I would hope that the chair of the Joint Chiefs would know enough about the construction from his subordinates that he would know that this is likely to be the case.
From his 15 years of prep work
I mean,
beforehand.
the Defense Threat Reduction Agency should have briefed him on this. And he probably was briefed.
Yeah.
He either didn't remember, or he doesn't know, or he doesn't care, or he's lying.
Yeah.
When I briefed the Chief of Naval Operations about these things, he had an impressive memory. I'll be honest with you, I didn't always think his wisdom was great, but his memory, he would catch me, I'd say something in a briefing, and he'd say, "Dr. Postol, didn't you say this earlier?" And I'd say, "Yes, sir," but I wasn't caveat, it was with regard to that, but he'd remember details, and that was good. I always respected that because I want to brief somebody who is thinking and asks questions when they think they either don't understand or think there may be inconsistencies in what they're being told. This is the way Tulsi Gabbard behaved when I briefed her. And that's one of the reasons why I have so much respect for Tulsi Gabbard.
And when
I
was
think
that,
she's
Ted?
very
That was
capable.
recently. That was recently,
Well,
correct?
I haven't briefed her for years, but when she
okay.
was in the Congress,
Ah.
she was asking me about the nerve agent attacks in Syria, and the intelligence on the nerve agents attacks in Syria were wrong. And in fact, this was Senator Mark Kelly tried to make an issue of this when
she was being when she was being confirmed.
when she was being confirmed, and I tried to communicate with Mark Kelly and his staff, and they weren't interested. And
Surprising.
let me take this opportunity to point out that if Senator Kelly would like to talk to me about what I'm saying here, I'd be pleased to talk to you, Senator. By the way, Senator, I understand you are on the Intelligence Committee, and I would hope you're interested in understanding whether or not you're getting accurate intelligence since you're in an oversight role. So please feel free to contact me.
I wanted to isolate that to make sure we'll get that out. Ted.
Okay,
Listen,
sure.
It's
sure.
important. We don't take
Yes.
it lightly.
I don't
Let's,
expect to be contacted by him or his staff.
I know.
And incidentally, I should also take this opportunity to point out that he brought this up in part because of an article that was attempting to, a drive-by shooting that was attempted on me that ran on the top of the fold on the front page of the Washington Post. That article was written by a journalist who was told by me in numerous emails that he was misquoting me because I talked with him extensively. And I believe, and I think the evidence is overwhelming, that this article did not run on the front page above the fold by accident. I think that journalist was told by the editors of the Washington Post that they want to do a drive-by shooting on me in order to try to undermine the credibility of Tulsi Gabbard. I don't take this personally, but what I'm pointing out here, I don't care. I mean, these people are nothing to me, but what I'm pointing out here is that you can't trust the Washington Post, the so-called paper of record that's that's supposedly informing the community of people who are interested in U.S. policy, and you can't trust the intelligence community. It's a pretty bad situation. If you think that our democracy is in peril, that should be more important to you than whether or not Donald Trump is president.
Yeah. Well, Ted, that's exactly why we're doing what we're doing today, right now. So
Absolutely.
I hear you. And everybody that's watching this hears you also, Ted. Let's get back to the presentation here.
Sure.
See
Absolutely.
and again, you stop me as soon as you want to.
I'll get off my soapbox.
Had to account.
You can get back on it later if you want, though.
Okay.
Ted. Yeah.
For this, they accounted for everything. The cap was forcibly removed by the first weapon, and the main shaft was uncovered. Weapons 2, 3, 4, 5 were tasked to enter the main shaft, move down into the complex at greater than 1,000 feet per second, and explode in the mission space. Weapon number 6 was designed on each side, so there were 6 on each side. Weapons number 6 was designed as a flex weapon to allow us to cover if one of the preceding jets or one of the preceding weapons did not work. The video I'm about to show you is a culmination
Why don't we
of over
stop
50
there?
Yeah, please.
So it appears, I can't be sure, it appears that he's suggesting that there were that they didn't expect to penetrate all the way down. I'm just guessing this from what he said, because he's talking about the caps, the concrete caps being blown off, which is well, it's possible that the munitions would have first penetrated through the caps. They would have proceeded down the tunnel to some depth. We don't have any idea what depth. And the explosives in the munitions would have detonated. That's 6,000 pounds of high explosive. So it's going to cause a tremendous volume of hot explosive gases. Those gases are going to come up the shaft unless the shaft has been opened all the way to the bottom, which there's no reason to believe occurred. And when those gases come up the shaft, if there's enough of the cap left, it could lift the remaining pieces of the cap off and blow those pieces off. So that's what could have been happening as he described it. But what it clearly shows is that the bottom of the shaft was still sealed. So you weren't getting into anything below.
Got it. That's key. That's key.
Yeah.
From what they're claiming.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably a very good soldier, but doesn't know much science. And he hasn't taken the trouble to be informed, or he's not telling the truth.
Appreciate that, Ted. Here we go. We'll continue.
15 years of development and testing. As I said, hundreds of test shots on various models. This is one weapon. So if you take a view of this as 5 additionals, you'll get a sense of what this looks like. Keep it going for a minute. You'll see inside the mission space.
That's the detonation of the explosives in the test, and this is the explosive gases, and that's, of course,
Unlike a normal surface bomb.
Can you hold it
you
a second,
won't
please?
Absolutely. Go
Can
right
you
ahead.
go back
Ted.
just to to the
Yeah, I
last.
can. One of the hole or
See,
before
now
that?
you see it's a very clean hole. It just punches right through the concrete. And that's fine. I mean, that's what you expect it to do. But you don't see a lot of debris all over the place because in the earlier frames, we don't need to go back to those because we'll have a PDF file where we'll go through it frame by frame if
Great.
we're interested.
Yes.
You can see a tremendous amount of luminous gas coming out of the tunnel entrance. If that tunnel were sealed, if you had that tunnel entrance sealed with ultra high performance concrete, what you would have seen is that tremendous amount of luminous gas coming up through this hole. It would have expelled through the hole, and you would have seen a lot of debris up through the hole because that's where the gas went. It's just thermodynamics. But let's proceed.
Sure.
Unlike a normal surface bomb, you won't see an impact crater because they're designed to deeply bury and then function. I know there's been a lot of questions about that. All 6 weapons at each vent at Fordo went exactly where they were intended to go. A bomb has 3 effects that causes damage: blast, fragmentation, and overpressure. In this case, the primary kill
on a second.
mechanism.
Yeah.
It's actually not quite true what he said. There are 4 mechanisms. There's a mechanism where the munition is penetrating the earth, and as it penetrates the earth, it's crushing rock or concrete in front of it. And in the case that we're looking at here, I'll show you again in the slides that all that debris that you see at the bottom of the tunnel is actually from the column of crushed concrete that then sprayed into the tunnel. And when the detonation occurred, it didn't cause that bunch of debris. The debris was produced by the penetrating impulse of the munition. So he's not correct in that statement. There are 4 mechanisms, but go ahead.
Just a little bit left here, Ted, in this piece that we
Okay,
have.
sure.
In the mission space was a mix of overpressure and blast ripping through the open tunnels and destroying critical hardware. The majority of the damage we assessed based on our extensive modeling was a blast layer combined with the impulse extending from the shock. Imagine what this looks like 6 times over.
So that's what we have there, Ted. Did you want to address the brightness that the pilots had seen, or do you want to?
Yeah, why don't we go to the PDF file about
Sure.
which is about the Pentagon briefing, and why don't you jump to slide 4?
Sure.
And here we see a frame from the video. In the upper right corner, you can see the splaying out of debris from the munition penetrating the concrete surface. Also, keep in mind that this concrete surface is rather thin. You can see the opening of the tunnel below. So you can see that it's penetrating only a few meters of concrete. Now, the munition in the case of the Fordow nuclear enrichment site would have to penetrate some 60 meters or 70 meters or even 80 meters into a tunnel of the kind we're looking at the entrance of, if it's going to do severe damage to everything in the tunnel. Now, in the case of going through the shafts, it doesn't have to penetrate so much material. So if it follows the shaft, it could go down at quite a high speed. In fact, the chair of the Joint Chiefs said 1,000 feet per second. That's about
Right.
It's about Mach 1, so it's a good high speed. And of course, if it went straight down the shaft, which we don't know is the case because the cap could have caused the deflection of the first munition. But of course, if there's a second munition following it through the cap, that munition could well have followed down into the tunnel. Of course, the tunnel could have been sealed at the bottom. But let's go to the next slide.
Ted, I have a question just quickly
go
as
ahead.
we go to the next slide. Do you have any sense of how wide the circumference of these shafts are? What kind of wiggle room are there when you're talking about what they're trying to accomplish?
I don't know, but it's probably comparable to the probably a few meters. I just don't
Okay.
know.
Got it.
But if you see, you've just gone to slide 5.
Right.
You can see the beginning light that's coming from the explosion, the beginning of the explosion. And then as we go to slide 6 and 7, you first see, you can see that in 6, you can see in the back corner, in the back of the tunnel, you can see the evidence of gas. That's luminous gas. So the gas is lighting up the entrance to the tunnel, but the gas is not fully expanded, but it's really hot gases. So it's luminous. And then in the next 3 slides, 8 and 9, you see this gas just coming out. That's the explosion. Notice that in the back on the roof, you're still seeing the top of the munition, the debris from the top of the munition. That's because this concrete surface, this concrete shell is so shallow. So this is not in any way a test that shows its penetrating capability. It's not a big deal that this munition penetrated through this much stuff. But there are other tests, so who knows what those tests are showing. Now, if we go, let's go to slide 16, where we're looking into the tunnel. If you look at the very top of the tunnel, and you go to slide 17, and let's go back and forth between slide 16 and 17.
There's
Go back
17.
to 16. You can see the beginning of the top of the tunnel distorted and being caved in as the munition begins to punch through. All right, and this is important because this is the damage mechanism that the chair of the Joint Chief fails to understand. We're going to see in slide 18 the penetration next of the front end of this munition. Look at all this debris that is following behind it. This is all the crushed rock that has been produced by the munition as it goes through the concrete roof. And all of that stuff, if we look at slide, the next slide, 19, you can see tremendous amount of this debris coming through, tremendous amount of it. And then in the next slide, you can see the explosion of the explosives beginning.
And is that the gases you were talking about also?
That's the explosive gases pressing up and shattering the outer steel wall of the casing. So they're shattered. The wall is just shattered by the internal pressure, and you see gases leaking through the cracks in the shattered steel casing.
Right.
And then in the next slide, you see the whole cavity is filled with luminosity.
Wow.
This is the gases, and because of the artifact of you're probably looking at infrared pictures. The gases are the bright luminous gases are filling the cavity, and you see darker and cooler material expanding outward, and you see in the next few slides, 23 and 24, this material expanding outward. Now, if you look at slide 25, that's the debris from the stuff that's punched through.
Got it.
And if you look at the top, you can see a lot of rebar that has been
Yes.
blown open that was in the concrete. So this is if we had the fraudulent UN report on the attacks at Khan Sheikhoun, I could show you rebar that's already that's also an example of an explosive event where the UN team was forced to describe it as something different. So we have fraud at all kinds of levels going on here. We have the Americans pressuring the UN to lie. The UN team that was reporting on the chemical weapons attacks at Khan Sheikhoun, they were lying in their studies. I have talked about that. I could talk again about it. All of this attempt of the American intelligence community intimidating international organizations, the U.S., of course, government, the leadership of the U.S. government, obviously approving it, lying to the American public. This is all together. This is all fits together. If you wanted to put on a show about the American intelligence community being out of control and the lying and misuse of the intelligence community by the political leadership, you have all the materials we could put together on it, a lot of it right in front of you here. So let's take a look at slide 28. Slide 28 is a piece of ultra high performance concrete that's been shattered intentionally so you can see what the interior of the concrete looks like. And you see all these fibers. Those fibers prevent the otherwise brittle concrete from shattering. They give a little flex and strength locally, so they distribute the stress over a larger volume, and they make the concrete tremendously more strong against shattering.
Ted, can you explain to me when I look at that compared to what you see rebar? Rebar, you'll see like inch, 2
Well,
inch
rebar
thick.
does the same thing, but it's on a more macroscopic level.
Okay,
That's what rebar is doing. This is at a microscopic level.
got it.
So what you're doing is you're mixing this in with, and then you put rebar in too. You
Got it.
really strengthen the concrete tremendously. So if you want to look at a tunnel made with ultra high performance concrete, here's a photograph from Popular Mechanics magazine. This is a tunnel that's very, very, very hard to a penetrating munition. And the way you make this concrete is you mix it together. Let me just show you slide 30 here. So you have the fiber, you see, you have fiber, you have fine sand, you have materials of all kinds of cement, water, and you mix this together. It's not just concrete; it's all these other materials together in this to make this ultra high performance concrete. And then if you go to slide 32, what you get is a material that's extremely strong because it's fused together, and if any piece of it moves, there's a tendency for the force to be distributed over a large area so it doesn't fracture. If the force is distributed over a very short area, it fractures, it fails. But what you're doing with these fibers and these mix of particles of different size is you're creating a material that distributes the stress over a larger area and keeps it from fragmenting, from brittly failing. And this material is tremendously strong. So if you want to see the outcome of this briefing, what the briefing is really talking about, I should show you. We should look at the next slide. This is what the briefing was really about.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
What we're talking about is The president made statements that he had no idea were wrong. He couldn't have known at the time he made the statements. In fact, nobody could have known. In fact, the Iranians couldn't have known at the time he made this claim of destruction. The Americans couldn't have known. The Israelis couldn't have known. Our own intelligence community couldn't have known. He made this statement right after the attack. There was all kinds of efforts needed. So now what's going on with this briefing was trying to cover up the fact that the president was lying, that he had to be lying because he could not possibly have known, because nobody could have known, and nobody who knew what they were talking about could have told him
Ted,
that it
it's
was
almost
complete destruction.
it's not, it's not unfathomable it happened, but you would
It's
have
not
thought
unfathomable at all. I
you
saw it
would
all
have
the
thought-
time in government.
you would have thought ahead of time that they can't possibly proclaim such, as they say, obliteration when there's no boots on the ground to examine it. They themselves even admit it would take quite a while to get to the bottom of something. So for them to come out immediately, and not just Trump, there's many in the administration.
Hegsth is there, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs.
Yeah.
I'm sad to say Tulsi Gabbard has been forced to say something I doubt she believes. That's my guess. I don't know. I apologize, Tulsi, if I'm wrong, but because I do have a high regard for you.
Sure.
But this is a circus. It's a political circus designed to minimize the embarrassment to President Trump for having spoken without any knowledge, and just a full, absolute, unequivocating lie.
Ted,
Which is incidentally important, not just because he's lying to the American people. If you're Vladimir Putin and you listen to this guy talking, and he told you a few weeks ago that he did not know that the Ukrainians were involved in an attack on Russian strategic nuclear forces, that he didn't know about it, what are you going to think? This guy doesn't tell the truth.
It's not a good look.
You can't believe anything he tells you.
Ted, what is the timeline for getting to the bottom of this? Thoroughly, completely. What would be a fair assessment, time-wise, and then how long would that take? Do you think?
Well, I think the satellite data, which was referred to they could see the current space-based infrared system is quite a remarkable system. It literally can act like a television camera. It's got very high resolution, and it can see in a wide variety of wavelength bands. This is a remarkable piece of technology. It's built for early warning of missile attack. However, this system has it has a very high time resolution. It can see things in milliseconds. It can give you a two-dimensional image from space in milliseconds in the infrared, in multiple infrared bands. This would have been able to see the flash from the vents when those bombs hit. And they should have been able to see the venting gas from those munitions hitting and not penetrating into cavities. And that would have told them unambiguously that they didn't penetrate into the cavity. They know that now if they're doing the analysis.
Ted, and I don't know.
That's a remarkable technical capability I'm describing, because I've studied that system in great detail.
What happens when uranium is exploded? What kind of evidence would there be? Like, what kind of detectors what would we see, or what would we be able to tell when uranium is
if you're talking about
destroyed?
uranium-235 being exploded by a conventional means, or being damaged by uranium, it would be uranium hexafluoride gas, which would be probably solid a good deal. It has to be heated to be in a gas, and it would be in a canister. You could have essentially all of the, the Iranians supposedly have about maybe 600 kilograms of highly enriched, 60% enriched uranium hexafluoride. This is the gas that they would use in the centrifuges. Well, you could put that in one canister, these big drums that they drag around. And you could put that on the back of a truck and move it. So
talk about that. You had, before we were on air, we were talking a bit about that. What is the degree of difficulty of moving this uranium, if they did, and a lot of people believe they did?
It's like moving, a ton of material on a truck. I mean, you just have a 5-ton truck, or the back of a pickup truck. You can almost,
because they're trying to describe it like it was almost an impossibility for them to get it out there in a short amount of time.
Ridiculous. Ridiculous. It's just trying to play on the non-expert lack of knowledge in the public. I don't use the term ignorance here because there's no reason, if you're not an expert, you should know these details. So they're trying to play on the lack of expertise of an interested and intelligent audience. So this is really deception. It's like me telling you, oh, I give you this really nice car, and it's got these white wall tires. Oh, I forgot to tell you, it doesn't have an engine. What are you talking about here? This is ridiculous. They have these canisters that they use to store uranium hexafluoride. One canister can carry all the uranium hexafluoride, load it on a truck, a small truck, drive it into a deep tunnel somewhere, and it's can't be reached even if you know where the tunnel is.
So that's not only plausible; it's likely that that's what occurred.
Likely, I mean, these guys are out there pouring concrete days before an attack or weeks before an attack. You mean they're not going to move this stuff where they know that we know the location? We know the location because the International Atomic Energy Agency publishes the location data. And the Iranians have been following the agreement to keep the International Atomic Energy Agency informed. They have announced that they will no longer keep the International Atomic Energy Agency informed. Now we know nothing about their program. They could be right now enriching that uranium to a bomb at a rate, I would say, if they only had a small centrifuge, 1/20th of what was in the site at Fordo, and they could be enriching 60% to 90% uranium, to 25 kilograms of 90% uranium once a week.
Ted, and you know
getting
how
a
many
bomb a week at this point with next to no enrichment capabilities, with a small fragment of their capabilities. Now, who understands the state of the Iranian program would not advise a military group of officers? I've worked with military officers over my career. I have a great regard for the officers I've worked with. They're smart. They know their business. I don't know their business. I don't claim to be an expert on these military things. I know something about it because I know a lot of capable, really smart officers I've learned from over the years. But I would have been telling them what I'm telling you. And there's no question in my mind that the officers I dealt with regularly would have been absolutely smart enough to know what I was telling them, which was you can't succeed with this kind of attack. And I don't believe that our military is dumb enough. You would have to have had a group of completely idiotic officers, which we don't have that many of. We have competent officers. I have great regard for our military, at least their capability. And no way they would have agreed, they would have gone ahead with this attack on their own judgment. Somebody ordered them to do it in spite of the fact it was destined to fail.
And what you just
Right.
described a little bit about what they're doing with the uranium now has been called an impossibility by everyone in the administration, basically from the top
It's a
on
joke.
down.
It's a joke. Why don't we? You want to go to the other PDF I sent to you?
Certainly, sure.
Let's just go to that PDF, and let's. I'm leafing
Ah,
through
take your time. Take
my
your time.
pages. I'm not as fast as you. You guys, you're just too fast. For me.
You made it easy for me. That's why I'm fast.
Okay. Let's go to slide 25.
Sure. Give me a second.
Okay. This slide just says what I just said. Proceeding to a bomb is not easily stopped. Enriched uranium and further enrichment capacity is already there. So let's go to slide 26. It's a conceptual picture. I want to underscore it's conceptual. It's not. I'll show you a slide that has technical detail on it shortly. What I'm illustrating here is a situation. Imagine the red material that's in the little squares above is sugar in a bath of water. An alternative way of conceptualizing it is the red stuff is uranium-235 in a bath of uranium-238. All right, so if we look at the leftmost section where it says it's 10% enriched, let's imagine we're just talking about sugar being boiled, being in a pan with boiling water, and the 10% of the water is sugar. So after a few minutes, we boil off some 10 units of water, and we get to 11%, and then another 10 minutes later, we get to 14%, 17%, 20, and let's imagine we get to 50%. So we have spent 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 minutes getting to 50%. Now, in the next 10 minutes, we're going to get to 100% sugar.
Wow.
All right. So the graph below is showing how quick. So once I have, if you look at the last 9 and 10 on the X scale of the graph, you see the sudden increase you get at the last enrichment level.
Yeah, it's dramatic.
Right, so this is illustrative. It's just it's the process. So what you're doing with these uranium enrichment cascades is removing in each step, preferentially removing the uranium-238. The actual physics of it is different from this, but it's very close conceptually. So let's go to slide 27. I'm sorry, 27. Next slide. Now this is a no nonsense technical arithmetic calculation. All right, so I'm showing you. There's a unit called separative work units, which we can think of it as the amount of time that we're boiling the water. So if we have natural uranium, which is shown graphically here, roughly 0.7% uranium, if we want to enrich 3,200 kilograms of naturally enriched uranium to 5% to 3.5% enrichment, because we want to use it in a nuclear reactor, it will boil down to about 645 kilograms of 3.5% enriched uranium. And I will need about 3,500 separative work units of energy. So let's think of 3,500 units of heating, of time, minute. Now, if I want to go to 20%, if I want to take this material and go to 20% enrichment, I'm going to need 1,500 separative work units. So I've already expended 5,000 separative work units to get to 120% 112 kilograms of 20% enriched uranium, w- uh, uh, for to get to 20% and to get to about 112 kilograms of 20% enriched uranium. Now, if I want to take that 20% enriched uranium and boil it down to 38 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, I only need 380 separative work units. So you see how much smaller the number of separative work
Significantly.
units is getting.
Yeah.
And now I'm sitting there with 38 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. Now we know that the Iranians have about 600 or 700 kilograms of 60%. So we're just boiling down a particular amount of uranium. All I'm going to need is 120 separative work units to get to 90% enriched 25 kilograms of 90% of a bomb, an atomic bomb. Now, if I have a centrifuge cascade that's capable of a typical cascade, let's go to slide 28.
Sure.
I'm just putting this here.
Mhm.
I can send slides to people if they want.
Sure.
If you have a typical cascade of the type, there were 10 cascades of this type in the Fordo facility, plus other cascades which have each of these cascades have 174 IR6 centrifuges, which are capable of producing 783 kilograms SWUs per year. So that's about 4 or 5 times the separative work units you need. We needed 120 separative work units to go. So that's about, so you could produce about 5 bombs per year with just that cascade. 5 bombs per year, say 6 bombs per year, 1 a month. Well, if you have 4 or 5 or 6 of these cascades, you should easily be producing 1 every week or so. This is not a lot of centrifuges. They're building these centrifuges at maybe a few hundred per year, because we know how fast the
Iran themselves are producing that many centrifuges.
The Iranians are producing these centrifuges. Let's go to slide 31. All right, this is from the Institute for Science and International Security. They have been following this program in great detail. I congratulate them on their work. In the beginning of 2025, there were 15,000 units, IR6 units, and there's maybe 2. We look at the green curve at the end. We can see that there are.
It's over 17,000. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
I'm sorry. We can
That's okay.
see that they're producing maybe 3,000 or 4,000 IR6 or centrifuges per year, because that shows you the increase in centrifuges that are being that the Institute for Science and International Security was projecting. Now, for sure, the manufacturing capability of Iran has been damaged severely. All right, so we do, because everything above ground has been destroyed. So
at least, all right, on that
the
aspect,
manufacturing capacity may no longer be there. But that doesn't mean they don't have hundreds or even a few thousand of these centrifuges sitting in caves somewhere that we don't know anything about. In fact, I would be surprised if they didn't have it. If I were a member of the U.S. intelligence community, thank God I'm not, I would be warning the American leadership, we don't know what's going on there. We know what the International Atomic Energy Agency is reporting, but these guys, now I think the Iranians have been basically trying, what they have been doing by reporting what they're up to is trying to make it clear to the world if they were dealing with rational actors. We know they're not dealing with rational actors, that they have the capacity to move to a bomb very quickly if they choose to do so. They are also making it very clear that they have not chosen to do so. And the reasons for not doing that are very sound, are very wise, because if they proceed to building atomic weapons, it is very likely that Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey would react by wanting to have their own atomic weapons, not to mention Israel. Now, the Israelis should be smarter. And in fact, I know many Israelis, and I know many of them are smarter than this, and I just know they're shaking their heads quietly, with what their government is doing. Iran, with 3 or 4 nuclear weapons, can basically destroy Israel, because those weapons go on Tel Aviv, Haifa, Beersheba, a few other cities, and Israel is gone as a functional nation.
Mm-hmm.
If the Israelis want to destroy Iran, they can do it, but they're going to have to use these 80 or 90 or 100 nuclear weapons that they have, because Iran is a vast nation.
It's huge.
So the very first large-scale nuclear war we see in the world could be between Israel and Iran, thanks to Mr. Netanyahu.
Mm-hmm.
And incidentally, thanks to Mr. Trump, who knew exactly what Mr. Netanyahu was up to. And thanks to Mr. Hegsth, who also had to know. And thanks to the chair of the Joint Chiefs, who had to be in the loop on all this. And, these guys are putting the whole world at risk.
Ted, I've
and
heard
lying to the American people about
I've
it.
heard some opining going on that actually, with what you were just saying, with that dynamic in play, that what Trump was doing was a preemptive strike so that Israel did not take out their nukes to use them on Iran.
A preemptive strike that could not succeed any more than a preemptive strike with nuclear weapons could succeed if they're Israelis. Because if anyone thinks that there haven't been contingency plans made by the Iranians to deal with such an outcome, I think that they've been smoking banana peels. I mean, this country is a high-tech country. It's not as highly developed as the most rich and advanced Western states, but it is not a group of, I'll say it, please excuse those of you from the Middle East, don't be offended. It's not a group of monkeys running around in the desert. It's a group of sophisticated, highly educated, highly accomplished people who have built a very advanced society, who are more than capable to do this. And to treat these people as if they're somehow monkeys is almost it's almost a form of racism. We are dealing with a highly capable world in front of that's not part of the mainstream West. And I mean, I know a lot of these people. Many of these people are my friends because I know people in the Middle East. I have friends in Arab countries. I have friends in Russia. I have friends in China. It's what I do for a living. I talk to these people. I work collaboratively with these people because we all are working for a safer world. These people I work with are not maniacs. They are truly citizens of the world. I have high regard for them. They take personal risks in some of their cases. My friends in Russia were under a lot of heat from the Russian government in some of the things that we were doing, not because they did anything wrong, but because their security people can't believe that anyone might have learned something from the outside, and they can't go after me, so they went after my Russian friends. So I always joke with my Israeli friends more than all us. I used to have an Israeli friend who was in an office next to me at Stanford, and I used to say to him, uh, we joke about the security people coming after you at different times because I was in the Pentagon, and we'd always joke, well, all our security people are the same. They're bred in the same place. They just happen to be distributed in different societies. So they blame because security people can't imagine what an intelligent, intuitive assessment of the situation can lead to. So when I figured out that the Russian early warning system was not functional, the satellite early warning system was not functional, I told the Russians. Because the first thing I did was tell the Americans, who incidentally did not know. I had intelligence clearances at that time. I went and told the Americans. They showed me all the intelligence they had at the time because I had full intelligence clearances. It was clear we did not know, and I informed them about the shortfall because I was afraid that in a crisis, an American president might think the Russians knew something that they didn't know. I was afraid we'd have a Cuban Missile Crisis kind of situation.
Mm-hmm.
And because I had discovered this, I went to Moscow immediately afterward and told the Russians what I had learned about their system. I knew that I was risking getting arrested, but I felt my Russian colleagues should know about this because this was a serious problem that affected us all. It wasn't just Russia, because if Russia would attack the United States by mistake because they think they're under attack, we all die. And our intelligence community and our Department of Defense failed for 25 years now to help the Russians solve this problem, which is in our interest, the U.S. national interest to solve, because these guys are so interested in beating the Russians, whatever that means, that they put the American security and world security at risk for 25 years by not providing the Russians with the technical support we should have provided them immediately. That's what kind of government we have today. And I'd love to have some of these people come after me in public. I'd love to have a conversation with Senator Kelly about this in public. You guys are not serving the interest of the American people, the Congress now.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I think that's you're voicing a sentiment that is rather not unanimous, but it's I think a lot of us are feeling that same frustration that we're being lied to, we're being misled, and they're off on their
Well, I
own.
am one angry guy. I admit it. I have not tried. My wife would be in the background if she could hear me, waving her hands. Calm down, quiet down. These people. Yeah, she always does this to me, but she
Ted,
can't hear what I'm doing because I'm squirreled away.
No, it's funny.
But
We won't tell.
I intentionally, I have not tried to hide my feelings about this because people should be outraged. This is not some abstract question about Pythagorean theory or something. This is
Life and death.
Survival of humanity we're talking about.
Life and death. It is. Ted, I'm so grateful for your analysis. You really nailed so many things down that we have a better understanding. And obviously, we're going to need to have you come back because
yes, so sure.
This isn't going away anytime soon. They're now even, trying to explain or spin or whatever they're trying to do since that briefing, and we don't even know what the second explanations are yet. But obviously, we're going to have. Obviously, we're going to have to address.
Invite them to come at me on this.
Yes.
They have the data. They have to show how that data that I've described. They should have the space-based infrared system data. No question. They had that data within seconds of that attack. They couldn't have analyzed it that fast,
Right.
but they should have been able to analyze it within 2 hours.
Right. Well, listen, everyone, you can be sure that we will keep following exactly what's going on here step by step. And as soon as we know more and as soon as Ted knows more, you will know more also. So
I know what needs to be known now, but I can describe, I can brief you guys more about why I know it and describe the space-based infrared system and how it works, if that were of interest, and how it could be used to get this data and so on.
Good. So, yeah, we'll go there, Ted, for sure. Let's
absolutely.
Go there. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, unintimidated
Thank
and
you.
uncompromised. We'll continue and move on, march on.
Well,
Thank you.
As I like to say, I hope I've made your day miserable.
No, listen, the illumination that you bring is a tremendous, and again, it's ridiculous the way to try and wrap your head around what's going on, and so many things are coming at us, and so quickly.
It's stunning, Gary, and I really thank you for helping me put this on, because I couldn't have done it without your help.
It's our pleasure, Ted. All right, we'll
Thank
see
you.
you soon. We'll get together. Thank you.
Bye bye.